And that's one of the things that we drive very, very seriously on. And the other thing that we drive is to oversee the social ministries. All the social ministries are directly under the purview of the Honorable Vice President. As I present today, I'm going to just cover 3 aspects. The first is to give you a background of the PBF, of the Peace Building Fund, which has facilitated this workshop. And then secondly, we'll look at what then is the peace issue within NDS1, or rather within the national development trajectory. And the third part of my presentation will essay to attend to one thing. What is it that you have not been doing, and what is it that we would like you to do? And maybe also address why you have not been able to do it. Because some of it is not totally of your fault. Although in everything that you don't do, it is 100% your fault, and only 5% somebody else's fault, because it is you that doesn't do it. So the Peace Building Fund, within the Office of the President and Cabinet, is a multi-sectoral fund that looks at issues that support the platform of peace. Allow me now to remove my mask so that I can then not be muffled. But I'm sure that all of us within the COVID protocols know that you can only do this if you can measure your distance as being above 2 meters. Everybody else in this particular room should actually be having your masks up tight, closing your nose. Particularly your nose, don't worry about your mouth. Very little COVID issues come in through the mouth. Almost none, unless you kiss a COVID positive person. But all your COVID issues come through the nose. So you're better off covering your nose. Yeah, your eyes, you can attend to them, because some of the COVID issues come through your eyes, but mainly through your nose. So the Peace Building Fund is then was funded mainly through the United Nations, so that it could assist the government of Zimbabwe as part of the broader ZUNDAF element. The Zimbabwe United Nations Development Assistance Fund, that's ZUNDAF. And with that, we have managed to get about just above 3 million to assist within peace building efforts that the government of Zimbabwe needs to do. But within that peace building fund, we have 3 outputs. The first output is the output that directly looks at the national development trajectory of the nation. And that's why you find that it has a lot of support to the Ministry of Finance. And it started off with the TSP. And the main objective is to increase dialogue and citizen participation in development issues. That is the first output. The second output for the Peace Building Fund is directed at social security mechanisms. And the third output is directed at the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission. We have managed through the 2 outputs, the NPRC output and the social security or the social safety net outputs, to assist quite a lot. We have done a lot with the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education to facilitate a UNICEF-driven understanding of the peace component within education. also supporting the BEAM as well as the World Food Programme driven objectives. The Ministry of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare looks at that. Then on the third one, we have managed to capacitate the National Peace and Reconciliation Commission as well. And we have managed to give them computers as well as vehicular support so that they can traverse the whole of this nation. To date, they have achieved in setting up particularly what you would call peace committees at district and provincial level, and they're working towards a peace committee at national level now. But today, our emphasis is mainly on output number one. Output number one looks at the increased citizen participation and dialogue in order to build peace and trust within the development agenda of the nation of Zimbabwe. We did that with the TSP at that point when we signed, when the Chief Secretary signed it, it was for the TSP at that particular time. And the aim was to let the Minister of Finance, and especially under the Economic Development Act, to engage the people and get them to understand what TSP is doing. Why? Because in our achievement of peace, the most painful thing that can cause a lack of peace in any relationship is the absence of the appropriate information. Between you and your husband, or you and your wife, or maybe as English people would say, you and your spouse. I just didn't put the word spouse first. You use the word spouse first because in an African setting, we don't speak of a spouse. It's either your wife or your husband. So if you really want to cause trouble, just either over-give particular information or under-communicate. Anything to do with information transmission will end up causing conflict if poorly managed. Here is the TSP, and one of the drivers that really got us to say what is happening. The people don't even understand TSP, don't even want to work with TSP. And the answer was very simple. We are not engaging the people. We are not talking to the people about TSP and what is happening. That's why today, as we are getting into NDS1, people are shocked about the things that happened under TSP. When all of us first heard about the 2% IMT tax, how many of you went back to their pastor and said, this is a wedding season, it has come right now? How many of you are very happy about it? The 2% tax, that intermediate transaction tax. How many of you are very happy about it? Okay. The reason you're not happy about it is not because you inherently hate any taxation, because you are already being taxed. But the reason people were not happy with it is that they were not informed. They didn't understand the purpose. They didn't understand the manner in which it is going to benefit the people. But today, when you then look at what is happening in Zimbabwe, vis-a-vis what is happening first within the region, you would realize that whilst Zimbabwe did not get even a single cent from the international community to fight COVID, Zimbabwe's COVID prevalence is much lower than the lowest in the region. Why? They used part of that 2% tax to finance and cover internal resilience towards the fight of COVID-19. Flashback again. Within the region, when we are looking at the number of roads or infrastructure that is being constructed regionally, with people that have access to a lot of international funding, Zimbabwe has managed, with internal funds, to do more infrastructural activities than nations that have got international funding. But had we known this at the inception of that 2% taxation, we would have been happier. Which is why some economists are even saying today, 2% is too little. You need to go a little bit more. We don't know whether Minister of Finance is going to do that, but what we know is that what they did was right. But the ordinary person still does not understand that. That's where the peace issue comes in. And we're saying we need to get that ordinary person to understand what is being done so that they appreciate the outcome more than the current pain. So, having seen that, the PPF then went on to support quite a number of activities. We have supported activities for the Minister of Women's Affairs and Community and Small to Medium Enterprise Development. We also have gone on to support the youth for the sole purpose of getting them to engage on what the TSP was doing at that time. And now, our engagement with you is because there is an understanding and a belief that you are a very critical cog within the development agenda of the nation. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you are in what you call yourself private media or state media. As you heard the minister say yesterday, there is nothing like that. You're all within the media fraternity of Zimbabwe. The fourth estate is the fourth estate of Zimbabwe. And you need to understand what you can communicate, which is the purpose of this particular workshop today. That when you now understand the NDS1, all its 14 thematic areas, you could then pick up your own niche, because not all of us can propagate and amplify every aspect of the 14. You can take some particular aspects, and you can create issues and stories around them. The most important thing is we look at peace not as peacekeeping, because we are not keeping any peace, but as peace building. Now, the peace building fund, as opposed to a peacekeeping fund, is that peace keeping seeks to maintain the absence of conflict, whereas peace building seeks to create an environment where the individual citizens of any country will live in a self-actualization mode, which makes them not think of conflict and not engage in conflict. Peace building, if I may just go back to what Fukuyama says, you would find that he speaks of every nation could have gone through times and phases of dismembering. So peace building then engages in remembering that community or that society or that citizenry, so that in the process of remembering, the nation can then look at itself firstly as a nation with differences, But in those differences, they do not create divisions, but they create a diversity of understanding who we are. No one individual here has got the same complexion right through. Now, if you do, then it's a miracle. That's why the ladies will take time putting on a foundation so that they may look the same right through. But they still are not the same. Those differences are inherent. They are intrinsic. We only need to live with them and to manage them and make peace with them. Intuthuko esikhuluma ngayo ku-NDS 1 yintuthuko hloboni, izadalwa ngubani, edalela bani, ukuze ubani abe nguye oyidlayo. So our major problem has always been, it is development for somebody and it is work for the other. But the peace bridge says we now need to ask particular questions and ask these questions that get us to dialogue instead of have a divergent conversation. So the Peace Building Fund's efforts are basically those. Now let me just go on and say to you, I'm sure all of you are aware of the 5 P's of which are critical in the SDGs that we have, the Sustainable Development Goals that we have. You find that the first one is the planet. We live in this one planet and there's no other planet that we can go to. Yes, they might say we can go to other places. It costs the whole world to actually fly to the moon. So why would you think that you want to go to the moon or live elsewhere other than this earth? So it is the importance of valuing the planet that we have so that we may keep it, the resources that we have are in this planet. The second P is the people. The people that we are part of need to be part of our development planning. And how do we do that? We have to do it by talking to them, number one. Number two, involving them in what we are doing. And number three, finding out from them what they actually would rather is done for them. Because in some instances, we do a lot of things for them when in actual fact, they do not need them. Talk of the Blair toilet construction where the people came back after 6 months and still found that the men were still doing what is called open defecation. And they asked, but we have built you a Blair toilet. They said, no, the mistake that you have done is that my wife goes in there, so does my mother-in-law, so I cannot sit where my mother-in-law sits. Because you didn't ask them. You thought what they needed was just a Blair toilet, and then you build one Blair toilet in one direction. So the men still continue to go behind the kettle bar. So we need the people to be on our side. And who best to bring the people on our development side than you, the media fraternity? The third is the P of prosperity. There is no one under the earth that does not have within them the genome of wanting to be better than what they were yesterday. If even the simplest person, the person who is actually crazy and is a hobo in the street, have you noticed that they still dust their hands. Why? Because inherently in that lunatic, there is still the desire of being better. Unfortunately, they don't know how to. So there is no one who doesn't want to be better. That's why we bath every day, even if nothing changes. We're still as chocolate colored as we are. And then after some time, we still do more. Why? Because we want to be better. So prosperity is inherent in every human being. What causes problems is when a human being feels that this prosperity seems to be limited to a particular group of people. Then he or she looks at that group of people as the advantaged group. And when you look at the advantaged group, you always feel that they have more. That's when you will get the quotation that Kwame Nkrumah said, "The elephant is too big. No one can finish it." So corruption starts because you think the elephant is too big. So when we do not explain our prosperity issues and how there can be social development within a group of people, when we can't articulate that in our stories, we create problems. A very simple one is the current story about what the public service is calling the PSSS. I still am trying to learn the full name because our media is failing to articulate that. What they're articulating is how much less you will be earning. But no one pours in a cup of tea by saying how much less will be in the cup after I drank it. And yet the story that you get about the PSSS, that is the public service driven annuity plan, is how much less a teacher will be earning after they have taken that, after they've made that deduction. So in essence, we are looking at what is not other than what is. So then it creates a problem of prosperity that says, I will be less prosperous if I prepare for my future. No one looks at how much you get from NASA if you drop dead today. Your spouse or your wife or your husband or your family will get something that can't even buy a bag of meal for that funeral. The fourth P is what we are about as the Peace Building Fund, and that is peace. Peace is an enabler for development. Why is it an enabler for development? It is because of the 8 pillars of peace that I had you refer to earlier. Those 8 pillars literally assist you to get your arrival at the prosperity level faster. And that is why we would want the journalists, you as journalists and you as the media people, to articulate that. What are the things that are doing well that we should continue? Because life is all about stopping something and starting other things. When you stop some things, it gives you an opportunity to start better things. And when you continue the good things, it gives you an opportunity to not focus on those things that don't give you any benefit. Our challenge is that we have looked so much at those things that are actually negative. So because they make a story, but they make a sensational story that is not futuristic. And we need to ask ourselves, what are the things that will give us a sustained growth tomorrow, which we need to work on today? The fourth is partnership. So it's the fifth. The fifth is partnership. So peace and partnership come at the end because I feel they are a couple that always need to move together. You cannot, as the media, succeed on your own without partnering with the nation, with the citizen, with the state, with even aspects and parts of the machinery that moves the journey towards the SDG attainment. So when you get into partnership, it does not mean one is better than the other. It simply means when we pull together, we are better than when one is doing it. At times it becomes very difficult when government states its intention and there is no amplification of its intention. Then it is like it is doing nothing. Allow me just to go a little bit into what the Bible says. The Bible says, God gave the word, but many were the preachers that published it. When the word is released, it's not good enough. What makes us move forward is when there are as many people as the world can get that publish that word. We need at some point to get, say, about 10 different stories on the same issue that government is stating. Our major problem is that we don't have enough stories. And I'm glad you raised a very, very important issue that you asked me to respond on, Doc, but I'm going to respond to it now. You said we don't know what government is doing because government is cyber, it has a cyber, paranoia. We are afraid of actually getting things out into the digital sphere. One of the things that happens is you approach a local headmaster and ask them, what is your email address? The headmaster will tell you, ask the secretary. But it's not the secretary's email address. It's my email address as the headmaster. The DA does not even have a contact. Right? But many of us have a smartphone. And the only thing that is a smartphone about it is the level to which it creates a certain status. And we don't use all the potential that smartphone has. But you see, it's critical that when you ask that question, you should know that yes, we have that problem. And we are not going to shy away from telling you that yes, there is such a problem with some of us, but, and a big capital letter bold but, is that you should go down to Masasa in Harare, if you're in Harare, and see the government instrument factory, which we are now saying we are now going to produce our own computers so that government will not need to buy computers and import computers. It's there, it's running. We are producing computers. Some of the computers that I'm seeing here were actually produced in that factory. You buy them in a shop, but you don't know they were actually produced locally. Because we have a patent with international patent holders so that we can produce motherboards locally with international cover. Further, we actually have a good, what you would call a big mother computer. It's there. At times, most of you drive past it and you say, oh, what is this building? Next time you go past where the public service buses park, just look in between the two Mkwati and Kagubi buildings and you will see the government main computer there. And that is to help the e-governance element to move very well. It is there to help the e-management of our structures move. Right? And not only that, we appreciate that the government internet service provider has always been up and down. And it is government's drive. And tomorrow, it's a pity some of you will not be in Harare, but tomorrow you will actually be led through, I'm sure the ZBC will be able to cover this, when we showcase the ability of that computer to move around issues within the government network. It's there. It's not that it's not there. The issue is that we still need to get you and I, as government workers, ready to move. We are so afraid of these things and we think that it will fail, or we think that we don't know, when in actual fact we do. So, colleagues, we are not totally lost. There are things that we can do that we just have not been talking about. And that is what has created conflict and unnecessary lack of knowledge about what government is doing. We want to then also say to all of us that nation building is one of the most critical elements within the peace and the development, national development trajectory. When His Excellency the President articulated on his inauguration the devolution agenda, many of you thought that it was just a political game. But remember, there were two issues that the 2013 Constitution fought very vociferously to have it placed. It was the element that devolution should be a part of the constitutionalism within Zimbabwe. And from 2013 right up to 2017, there was no public declaration on that. But come 2017, 2018, up to present, everything has been moving very, very robustly, may not be very fast, but very robustly towards an understanding of devolution and an implementation of the devolution agenda. And why the devolution agenda? It is because the devolution agenda is part of internal engagement. Without being in touch with the lowest citizen, you cannot give him or her their rights and their enablement for social development without talking to them very closely. And devolution does just that. It still maintains us with a unitary government with devolved authority and operation. And at times we ask ourselves, how does this work? Many of us still have or are yet to go down to the districts and see the devolution projects. I fortunately was in Inyati on Friday. Friday morning I drove through the Bubi district and was shown a clinic that was built by the Bubi Rural District Council from scratch using devolution funds. And now it has shortened the distance for accessing health from 20 kilometers to that community to just down to about within 5 kilometer radius. Now that is what devolution does. Devolution is not just about power, but it is about self-development. It is about making sure that the community can drive their own dreams into fruition and into realization. And we need coverage for that at the lowest level. And that is part of the NDS1. You do not need to really look at it at a high level. Another issue is, which brings about the element of devolution, is when people are saying we are moving from a low income to an upper middle income economy. And everybody thinks that the upper middle income means we are all turning the whole landscape into an urban landscape. Nothing is further from the truth. Your grandmother, I don't know whether you've noticed this, your grandmother, to a large extent, has been receiving diaspora funds. And now it's Christmas time. Go and look at what they are receiving from their diaspora people. They are receiving two-piece outfits, beautiful shoes. And what does your grandmother do or your mother do in the rural areas? They dance, they clap hands, they wear that thing once and they put it away. Why? Because that gift was not devolved or evolved from a devolved position. Your grandmother may not be needing a two-piece dress to go to church in. What your grandmother may be needing is a solar pump in the rural area to draw water so that she doesn't have to go the 2 or 3 kilometers to the what do they call it in Shona? To Chiborani. Yeah. Right? So instead of getting them a two-piece suit, get them solar so that they can draw their own water, and make sure that there is a tank so that they can do their own vegetable patch. They will live longer. And they will live to actually give that dress to somebody before they die, so that nobody will be fighting for it. Now, all those issues come from us as the Fourth Estate articulating these issues properly to the people, so that people may understand that, hey, it's not so much about being an urbanized thing, but it is about you and I being able to self-actualize ourselves. In other words, it is to improve the quality of life within the population, and also to expand the income and the employability of a citizenship. One of the major challenges that we have with the Fourth Estate at the moment is that we have been trained so much in not articulating these things from our own mother tongue. So it's easier for us to write a story in English than it is to write the same story in Shona, Karanga, Ndebele, or even Nambia or Tonga. We leave that to other people. But let me tell you what you are doing. What you are doing is you have that information, but you are not propagating that information to be heard properly. I have read all the indigenous language papers in Zimbabwe, both digital and print. None is saying it in the indigenous languages what NDS actually articulates. Yet none of us here it's in an English language. So it means the people that are the 70% of the population are not hearing the NDS. So my challenge to you, in order to give peace, because the peace will be broken when they think people in towns are better than people in the rural areas. So they will move and squeeze you out of your little towns. And you will then say there's a problem. Rural-urban migration can actually be intermittent if we promote development within the rural areas and let them do it through their language and understanding their own culture. Without an understanding of our own culture, I want to be very clear with you, we are lost. We are totally lost. And by culture, I don't mean what used to happen. I mean what is happening now. Because that's what is important. And we need to articulate that in our own languages. So it's critical that when you are getting a story, don't tell the speaker, no, say it in English for wider communication. Who is wider than my own people who make 70%? So wider is who? That you have to use a foreign language to get to them. Cosmeropi. Vakaiwa wa sekua. How many are there? So, why am I here? This is the NDS one. Because we are not speaking in their language, they will think it is for other people. Right? Then to another extreme. But not for Zimbabwe. Anowereketa chikaranga. Hakuna singa wereketi chikaranga. Kana usinga unovipi. Ipapo nenge warasa vanhu vazhinji. Because we are Cosmeropi ane vanhu vasingawi kana chikaranga. Saka a very effective and peace-building reporter or journalist is one who, of the 16 officially recognized languages, wabula at least 5. At least 5, minus English and because these ones you don't need to even go to school for. These you simply need to go to a bar and stay there for a good 10, 15 days talking to people in another language. You will get these 3. English, Shona and Ndebele. But you can't get Xitsonga, Silvester, Tonga in these areas. You need to get yourself out. So a good peace-building journalist quickly assumes at least I should speak about 5 and be able to speak 5 indigenous languages. That's why was it on Tuesday last week, where the president literally, to a lot of people's expectation, started speaking in Tonga. And everybody was, can he speak Tonga? Yes. So if the president can speak more languages than you, and he's leading you, who actually should be a better reporter? You may ask and say, but Rev, where is peace in that? They say, and this is what Nelson Mandela said, The one that speaks to me in my mother language speaks to my heart. The one that speaks to me in English speaks to my head. So what do you want people to do? To hear from the head and not from the heart. Because what is heard from the head will not outlast the lunch that they would have been given at that time when English was spoken. But what is said in the heart will never be thrown away. So my challenge to you is just invest in learning a few more languages than you speak now. And it doesn't take a lot of time. It's there on the internet. Almost all the languages of Zimbabwe that are recognized are learnable on the internet for free. You can get them. The only thing, it just takes a little bit of drive when you desire the other people to have peace. Let me close by saying just about 4 things that are your roles in building the peace of the nation. The first one is to create positive perceptions about the NDS1. Because when you create positive perceptions, you are actually creating and painting an image. One of the statements that I always say when I was lecturing language was, words are not things, but they refer and create things. What you hear people saying is not there before a word is spoken. If you doubt that, look at the person that you say you love, either this evening or just have a video chat with them if they're not here. And just look at them for a few minutes and ask yourself, what exactly did I see in this face? You realize that you saw nothing at the beginning, but it was the words that created the right impression. And the rest is history. The rest is history. You're now living with them. No matter how they appear now, they can change their hairstyle upside down, but the words have made it in there. So your words as journalists create the right perception. And we are saying to you, let us together create the right perception about the NDS. Do you understand it? Maybe not. But who cares if you don't understand it? It is you who should care, so that the people that you speak to should care more. So your number one role in peace building is to create the right positive perceptions about the national development agenda. Number 2, it is your role to debunk the myths. There are so many myths that are going through. Myths about COVID, myths about NDS1, myths about money and all these things. But you should debunk them. In other words, it is your duty to get to the root of it, so that if the truth is unpalatable, you need to unearth it. Don't just simply go with the smell when you actually do not know what is the genesis of that smell. Which is what most stories are like. That's why they don't last. They're just like the smell. Then a breeze comes and you can't get it again. Number 3, it is your duty and your role to unpack policy. Let the government policy be unpacked by your storytelling, by your investigative journalism, so that you can unpack it for the people. The people want to know. But I'll say something that is a little bit sad. When I was in Form 1 and Form 2, that was sometime in the late 70s, one of the ways we always did our English lesson, and we had English every day, was the first 5 minutes of the English lesson was to read the newspaper and check the correct spelling of words. And at that time, and I only had the Chronicle, at that time, the spelling of the Chronicle was impeccable. You knew very well if you want to get the right spelling of vicissitudes, you went to the Chronicle. We didn't have digital Chronicle at that time, but it was the paper. But today, when I pick up the paper, at times I can't read a sentence to the end because it has got more spelling mistakes than correct mistakes. Than correct statements. Oh yes. And it's painful. I'm saying this, I'm not like, then now, you guys are bad or not. No. It is because some of us depend so much on the automatic spell check that at times misses some of your words as if they are. I think my first editor as a columnist, I think Mapena was my second editor. My first was the Fakana. He will tell you that he did not need to correct the spelling of my article. He would just correct the content. Because it's critical with people that they should read the right things. So let us actually get the policy unpacked properly. And lastly, your last role, which to me is really your primary role as people that are peace builders, it is to expose and amplify progress, no matter how small. It's critical to expose and amplify progress, no matter how small. The mere fact that somebody goes to the passport office and they need an emergency document and they get it in a day needs to be amplified. More than the 10, 15 times that they failed to actually even get to the front of that passport line. But we know very well what tells the story is how ugly the thing is. But have you never noticed that even those women that we call ugly get pregnant and they have not reported to the police that they were raped? It's because in Ndebele we say, iskova likad, umzimba inkulu. So at times we need to cover the negative and concentrate on that which is positive. Because it is better, it is much, much better to build on the positives than the negatives. Amplify even the smallest progress and let the people see it. They will then say, at least if this is being done, we have hope that what is not being done will still be done. I want to thank you very much for bearing with my rambling, and I assure you, Doc, that by the end of the day, if you want this presentation, you should be able to get it. Thank you very much.
This is a Temsek, and the Reverend. Please give him another round of applause. Thank you, Reverend. Secretariat is going to